all the way back when I was a little kid, the one thing I really wanted was good vision. I love sports and wanted to play them competitively, which I never really did. In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'm going to tell you about something that I wish for now more than good vision.
From Studio C, welcome to the I Can't See You podcast with David. He can't see, but he's got a lot to say and a face for radio.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 57 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benge on all the socials, including YouTube, where you can now listen to this podcast. So I hope you check it out there at some point. And I do appreciate you listening wherever you do. And again, episode 57, every time I say 57, it makes me think of Heinz 57, which then makes me think of a Flyers game I went to back in the day. I think it was 2001, sometime in March. The Flyers were hosting the Buffalo Sabres, and it was right around the trading deadline. And one of the players the Sabres had picked up was Steve Heinz, who was this scrappy player that was able to score, but he was very scrappy, so he was always in the mix of things. Whenever there were a bunch of guys together doing the, getting involved and maybe fighting, maybe just, roughing it up a little bit, he was one of the ones in there. And I believe it was his first game after he was traded to Buffalo, and I thought, wow, look, he's wearing number 57. That is so clever. His name is Heinz, and that has always stuck with me. So whenever I see 57, I think of Heinz 57, which makes me think back to that game I was at, most likely with my friend Mark. But I know I was at it, and again, I think it was I believe it was one of the first games, if not his first game, that he played with Buffalo. And he played for a few teams, but we don't need to get into that at this point. But again, episode 57, it's hard to believe that. Another thing I'd like to do before I really dig in is to wish Superfan Dan a happy birthday. The day I'm recording this is the 15th of January. That is his birthday. And happy birthday to you, Dan. Again, we'll talk to you tonight when Liz and I give you a call. If you guys remember back a few episodes ago, I talked about how Liz and I will sometimes call folks up, friends of ours whose birthday it is, and sometimes their kids, and sing them happy birthday. And it's terrible the way Liz and I sound, but it seems like people laugh and get a kick out of it. I don't know if they're laughing with us or at us, but I know somebody once told us that they needed that when we had left that that message on their answering machine. So Dan, hopefully you'll be able to recover from listening to Liz and I. So as I mentioned in the intro, when I was a little kid and as I was growing up, I love sports and I still love sports. All the majors, football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. Basketball, I don't watch too much. And actually, the only one I really watch a lot of is football, American football, and Premier League football, which, of course, is soccer. We won't get into why American football is even called football because they only kick it every so often. But I love sports, and I love playing them as a kid, even though I was told you shouldn't play this, don't get hit with the ball. And, of course, all those things happened. Although I don't ever recall getting hit in the eye. Maybe once playing soccer in school, and and that was actually kind of funny because when I did get drilled in the face, and I went to the nurse looked at and saw some of my early surgeries, the early surgeries, which I don't know how they do it now, but back in the day, in the mid '60s, when I was an infant and a toddler, and I had these surgeries, basically they put little holes in the top of my eye to allow it to drain. I have congenital glaucoma. That's my main issue. And that would allow, the fluid to drain out so the pressure wouldn't build. Well, I think the nurse got nervous when she saw that and said, oh, you should go to the eye doctor. And of course, I was happy to leave school. And as my parents found out, once I left school, I didn't have to go back. And this was fairly early in the day. It was certainly in the morning. One of my parents came, and I'm guessing it's my dad came to pick me up. And then I went to the eye doctor, who was a family friend, and he kind of chuckled at it because he saw that it was probably just one of the surgeries the nurse had seen, and everything looked good. My pressure was fine, and everything else. And again, I was happy to to miss the rest of that day of school. But I've loved sports, and I've always wanted to play them. And even again, going back into middle school when I believe it was this incident happened, getting hit in the face with this ball, there was a note from one of my eye doctors to another one that basically said, unfortunately, he is somewhat athletic and likes to play sports even though he shouldn't. And I always thought that was funny because and I still love it. And all the way back from when I was a little kid, the one thing I wanted was good vision so I could go and play baseball. And that was the sport that I probably played most as a kid. And again, it was, was not easy because I had, limited vision my entire life. So, if the weather was funny and the sun was in my eyes, or if it was too dark out because it was very cloudy, the ball wasn't bright enough, so we were always constantly buying baseballs so they would stay, be as white as possible. When I played Little League as a kid, the coaches were afraid to put me in the infield, figuring I wasn't going to see the ball and I'd get hit with it. So my entire life, I just wanted to play sports, and I just wanted to, be able to see well enough. And even as I got older, I thought, if I can, if I get good vision by the time I'm this, I'll still be able to play, even if I had to play in, I guess what you would call a beer league. Playing softball, it would still be something, and I'd still love to do that. And of course that hasn't come, and exactly what all my eye doctors all along have told me, my vision wasn't ever going to get better. It was just going to get worse if they couldn't maintain it. And over the years I've had all these surgeries and it's always been to maintain what vision I have. And, again, as you get older, anybody that's out there in their 50s now, they know because they've seen changes in their vision, whether they're getting readers or they're having cataract surgery or whatever. That's where we're at. And, and I knew that it was never going to, to get better, but I always hoped that it would. And it was always my dream that they would come up with something. In fact, I used to walk into my eye doctor and I used to say, do they have anything yet, Larry? Anything new? This is of course back before the World Wide Web, and you could, now I can look and I see things that, that come up. In fact, there was an article yesterday that, if I can find it again, I'll link to in the show notes, about a guy that has a prosthetic eye that he's put a little video camera in. Now he's unable to start and stop it. It basically puts it in and it shoots for 30 minutes until the battery dies, and it transmits the everything electronically to a recorder. And I thought, oh, that is so cool. Well, I don't have a prosthetic eye to use that with. I do have an eye that doesn't see anything, and I would, I'm pretty sure I would swap that out for a camera if there were at least a little bit of control to it. But, my entire life, every night when I went to bed, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll be able to see. And of course, it wasn't the case. And as I've gotten older, other things happen along the way, whether you get hurt from doing something or, certain things happen. And one of the things that I found out when I was a teenager, I had psoriasis. And when I was a teenager, it was, just behind my knees, I think, or in my elbows. I don't remember. But that progressively got worse once I hit 30 or 32 or something like that. I know Jacob was small when I found out that it was I had psoriasis, and I was on all these medications and creams and whatnot, and I thought that was terrible until I got psoriatic arthritis. And psoriatic arthritis, from everything that I've read and from what people have said, and I've had it now, or at least known I've had it probably around, I don't know, maybe 10 years. Basically medicines seem to work for a while and then they don't. And, and that's what I'm going through now. So over the last few years, and part of it now could be that, the weather's changing. It's cold. Yesterday, here in suburban Philadelphia, it was rainy, and so things hurt, and that's the issue. Some days I get up and so many things hurt. As I talk to you now, my left shoulder and my left knee are bad. My feet are, my toes are terrible. And so it's gotten to the point where I was listening to Blind Abilities, a podcast that I know I've mentioned multiple times before here. And I was listening to that, and one of the guys on that podcast was talking about playing blind hockey, which I think would just be so much fun. I'd love to do that, but, I thought, geez, could I even skate? Just the thought of putting skates on with, my feet the way they hurt, or holding the stick, like I've mentioned before, I could walk even with my feet being, sore all the time. I could walk. It's, my hands and wrists are terrible as well. And, holding a stick and, the lack of sensation, especially in my right hand, if I'm holding something light, like a piece of paper or something small, I will, sometimes drop it, again, depending on the day, multiple times while I'm standing there trying to hold it. So that has trumped wishing for good vision and hoping for good vision because, I guess I've gotten used to and been able to figure that out. And that doesn't hurt. The fact that I can't see doesn't hurt. Would I like to see better? Of course. One thing that I can't stand is feeling crappy. And for the last few months especially, that's most days, that's how I feel. And, part of it, sometimes psoriatic arthritis, you go through times when there's what they call flare-ups, and maybe it's a flare from everything we went through with my mom, all the agony and pain that she went through towards the end, and then of course her death, and then the funeral, and then the getting all the stuff together to get to the attorney and go to the courthouse with the, register of wills and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot to do, obviously. And if you've ever had to do it, you kind of know. And as I had mentioned to Liz, when my dad died, over 7 years ago, there wasn't as much to do because everything, went to my mom, and there wasn't anything that had to go through probate because everything just went from my dad to my mom. If they, they were either joint, or she was the beneficiary if they didn't have joint accounts. So this is all, no, I don't want to say new, but it's unfamiliar for us because if whatever we went through with my dad was 7 years ago, and it wasn't nearly as involved as this is, where we're the only ones left. We don't have, we make the final decisions with, do we want to keep that piece of furniture, that tchotchke, whatever. Do we want it? Do we not want it? Whereas, my mom would say, oh yeah, I want to, I don't want, this is Dad's, I want to keep it, and so forth and so on. And we kept whatever she wanted, and then we kept whatever we wanted, and then we got rid of the rest. Now it's down to us. And there's some things obviously that are, sometimes hard to get rid of because it means something, but it's, might be big and might not fit in our apartment, whatever. So there's just a lot more, and there's just been more overwhelm, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if it's, like I said, because this is it, and everything has to come to us, or we have to get rid of it. So it's not like it could stay with my mom or stay with someone else and then come to us eventually. Now it just comes to us, and so it's just been a lot just doing all that. So, maybe that's part of it. But, thinking back to what Jeff said on Blind Abilities, playing blind hockey, I just think it would be so much fun to do. And then it made me start to think of my friend Warren. I know I've mentioned him before. He is a runner and has run in a few marathons and is hoping to run in this year's Boston Marathon. And I hope he does, because I think that's just such a huge accomplishment. I just think about running and, and how my left knee always hurts so much. It's just, I just, like I say, I used to wish for perfect or good vision. I just wish that, I just didn't ache like I do. And, and there's a lot of things with that, that it affects. It affects the way I hold a pen when I have to sign something. It affects opening a door. It's kind of weird with me because I don't have any vision out of my right eye. Even though I'm a right-handed person, I will tend to reach and do things with my left because, I can see where my hand is going. When I use my right, I really have to look around to find it, when I'm, trying to reach for something. So, I typically will open a door with my left hand, but when my hand and or wrist, especially my wrist, and, that outer nub on my wrist, that bone, over the last few days especially, has hurt so much and almost like pulsing pain. I can't open the door with it. Sometimes I'll reach for it and realize, oh wait, don't, use the other hand. So maybe I'll touch the doorknob and then I'll just, take my right hand and reach over and turn the doorknob, or, open the door, pull it that way. So it's interesting how over the course of my life that's changed. I never thought there'd be anything that I wanted more than good vision. And, we've had some things scheduled lately with some friends, and, one or two of them, were under the weather, so they didn't want to, they said, well, I'm not feeling well today. And, it's so we had to postpone. And, there have been times that I hate to, to lay around, but, I felt so crappy that, I didn't want to do anything, but I do. And I keep pushing myself to do it. When I went up to see Jane for her birthday a couple of weeks ago, I didn't feel near 100%. And, but I still did it. And once I got moving around, and sometimes that's the key. Sometimes once you do a lot of moving, some of the pain goes away. I know in my knee, for example, after I walk a while, that actually makes it feel better. Sometimes it doesn't go away. In my hands, I just can't hold, my cane in my left hand when it hurts so much. When Liz and I are out and about, usually we hold hands, and I hold my cane with my left hand. I don't sweep it back and forth when she's holding my hand. I just hold it so people see that, hey, that guy can't see, so get out of his way. Or, be mindful of that. Be mindful of that. So, but lately it's hurt so much that instead of holding hands, she actually holds, my, right by my elbow, and I hold the cane with my right hand and just keep my left hand just kind of, is down at my side. So it just makes things, it's put things into perspective for me, because again, like I said, when I was a kid, all I wanted was to have good vision. And, so that I hope that, one of the things that, also happens, and I always, when I'm out and about, usually when I'm by myself is when I'm more self-conscious. Because I have a little bit of sight, I often wonder what people think. Like I mentioned last week when I was in B&H Photo, in last week's episode, and I told you how I browsed around B&H Photo when I was up in New York, what people thought. And, because I have a little bit of vision, sometimes I notice if somebody's coming towards me or comes out from a side aisle or a side street when I'm walking down the street, or coming out of a door of a building. Sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do, and I get out of their way. And, I wonder if they realize, hey, how did that guy, he has a white cane. How does he see? How did he see me? Maybe he doesn't need that. And again, that's, my friend Warren tells us the story that, again, he has a little bit of vision, and he noticed, he was walking down the sidewalk. He noticed a guy propped up against the building, sitting on the sidewalk with his legs outstretched. So his back was against the building, legs were outstretched, and he saw this guy a couple of feet before he got there and hit him with his cane. And so he moved around him without hitting him with the cane. And the homeless guy said to him, hey, that guy's not blind, he can see. And, I haven't gotten that, at least since I've had the cane. What I have gotten over the past, little bit, when I have the pain from the psoriatic arthritis, sometimes just a little ding, if I hit it on, on a countertop, like walking into our kitchen, for example, it's a little bit narrow between the counter where the microwave is and another counter. And on occasion, because I can't see very well and I don't use my cane inside the apartment, I will hit one side or the other. Well, it's not too bad if I hit my forearm on my right side, my right forearm, because, that doesn't hurt as much. My wrist on that hand doesn't hurt as much. On the other side, though, on my left forearm, just a little tiny tap that, you would laugh at. And I can recall even when I was a little kid, my dad would do something and he'd say, "Oh, that doesn't hurt." I'm like, "Yeah, that did." And, it just makes me think. And I have had that when I was doing something, somebody said, "Oh, that can't hurt. That what's the matter with you?" And again, reading in some of the groups that I'm in, the psoriatic arthritis groups, they mention that how people just don't get it. And, I find that with the vision as well, people just don't get, they'll say, "Oh, it's right over there." And they'll point and only just say it's right over there and point. And, "Hey, I have this cane, I can't see." And I try to not let any of that bother me, especially when they say, "Oh, that can't hurt," or, "Well, what's the matter? Boy, you're so fragile," or whatever. But that makes it, that just makes it that much worse. You feel bad already. And again, how when you don't feel 100%, you're a little grumpier and, you're just not as much fun to be around. And as I like to say when I'm squeezing the lemons into my tea, "Ooh, that lemon's a little bitter, like me." And and there are days that I am a little more bitter than others. So just keep in mind, if somebody says it hurts, it hurts. Just take them at face value. Why do you have to question it? Just like, again, with the pain that I've been in over the last few months or last few weeks especially, I think more and more about, moving to some place where maybe it wouldn't be as bad, where it's warm out all the time and, I'd be out and about more often than not. It just makes me think about a family member who I won't mention, not somebody that, not my immediate family that lives with us or I helped produce, but a family member who, questions a lot of things. And this person questions, different things that we do, but, doesn't look close enough to home to question some things that's a lot closer than having to, think about what we do or don't do. And, I do look forward to moving to where it's warm and so we can spend some time outside and, and hopefully that will make things, I'll wake up more days than not in pain and, able to, walk it off after a while. So I know that's not a happy topic for today's episode, but, I just never imagined when I was growing up or even as a young adult that I would want anything more than good vision, because, vision, everything I like to do is visual. I love sports, whether it's playing sports or being able to announce a game or, I love doing, graphics and, I'd love to be able to do painting. And, I believe somebody has done, some, like the painting you do at a restaurant. I forget what it's called, but you go and you do the painting. Everybody paints the same picture. Liz has done it once or twice, and I'd love to do that. And I don't know how I would do it. I don't know how easy that would, but I would love to do that. I just love, again, I'm a very visual person, as Maury, my mobility trainer, told me years ago. It's harder for people who are visual to cope with not being able to see. But again, I'm telling you today that I would pick, to be pain-free over having even better vision than I have right now. And just like everything else, like I've told you in the past, vision fluctuates, day by day. Sometimes, during the course of a day, it'll get better or worse, depending on the environment or what I've eaten or what may or may not have has shot into my eye while I'm squeezing it into my tea. Lemon does not fix vision, by the way, as much as I've tried. But I do appreciate you listening to episode 57. A couple of things. If you've enjoyed or enjoy the show in general, I'd really appreciate it if you rated and reviewed it. It'll help us grow. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And again, you can catch the podcast on YouTube. So that would be youtube.com/David Benge. Again, David Benge on all the socials. And I hope in the next couple of weeks, I hope to have some guests on so you don't have to just listen to me ramble on about a particular topic or several. But again, I do appreciate you listening to episode 57 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David. Please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast. Follow David on Twitter. He is at David Benge.